Wow, that was a little bit different of an intro video. I don't know why that kept playing
That
back. What
was.
is up, guys? Welcome back to the Huddle, your weekly playbook helping you gain forward progress in your flooring career. Simply put, we're here to help you win. For all our new viewers, welcome to the team. What's up, Andy? With us today, Mr. Andy McWilliams. Did I say
What's
that
going
last name
on?
right?
Yes, you did. Yep.
And with me, as always, is either Jose or Daniel. And today we got Jose. Daniel has a
Daniel is
child in a
playing baseball.
some
Yeah,
type of a sport event.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, his
So
son is playing baseball today. Got a doubleheader started at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So yeah,
yeah. So it's going to be us three. Andy, welcome to the huddle, my friend.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, give us a little background about you, a little bit about yourself, and how you ended up in our great flooring
industry.
industry.
Yeah, so I pretty much grew up in it, installing with my uncles. My dad did mostly tile and then, some carpentry work, but my uncles, they carpet, hardwood, vinyl, you name it, so I kind of went with them after my dad passed and, just grew up in the industry installing and moved to South Carolina when I was about 19 years old and kind of never looked back in terms of flooring. Just that's what I moved there for. I took a bus with a backpack from the town that I actually just moved back to um, when I was 19, and I heard that there was flooring work available there. Got up there and never looked back. So started my own company. It was an installation company. Worked there for years. Over those years, I worked with a ton of different installers because I was young, so I wasn't always doing my own work. There was times where I didn't have enough work, or in Charleston, it's just kind of a small area, so the network is pretty tight knit there. So we would always you know work with each other on larger projects and things like that. I had a lot of experience working with a lot of guys, and then in 2019, I was contacted to go over to the dark side, I guess some say, become a technical guy. So for vinyl flooring manufacturer, so it's been fun. I work for Navalis now. I'm the commercial technical manager for Navalis.
Sweet.
Look at you,
Yeah,
big dog, doing big things, big dog.
yeah,
Woof, woof.
trying.
Well, thanks for the background. Do today's topic being, installer confessions, tales of the job site. Um, I thought we would, you know, maybe tell a serious thing, a funny thing, and something we got away with. And there's probably more than one of each of those. So, to our audience, if you participate, it makes it funner every time you guys comment and participate in the podcast. It makes it super fun. So, we're going to start with a quick question to you, Andy. Do you like what you're doing now? Do you miss getting your hands on it, or do you still get your hands on the product and do any like install stuff with your
Oh,
current position?
definitely still doing not a good bit of install. Enough to keep me, engaged, I would say, and enough to keep my skills sharp. I was a carpet and vinyl installer for the most part. I mean, I did dabble in other surfaces, but that was my main two. So not any more carpet. I think I had a friend of mine reach out to me when I first moved back here to put some carpet in like a storage area that they had turned into this kiddie play area because it was an Airbnb, and so that was about the extent of my carpet installation days in the last 5 years. But it's in terms of vinyl, yeah, I'm doing a ton of vinyl all the time. So
Cool.
tons of shows and things like that. So, but I'll say this was always my dream job from the time I was old enough to understand like what a technical guy was. My uncles had tech reps come out on job sites where there was issues and things like that, and it was always just like when they'd fly into town and fly back out, and I was like, holy crap, that's what I want to be. And it ended up happening, and I had no idea it was going to. I would have never told you 6 years ago that I would be sitting at my dream job doing what I love to do, and I really do. I enjoy every minute of it.
You're
That's
good at it
awesome.
too, brother. I just want to add into that Andy was mine and Crystal's certifier, one of the classes we took for the LVP Resilient class. That he phenomenal instructor, very animated, very in tune with what he's doing, and he's not losing any skills, right? He's got his skills there, and he does get to practice more often than you think.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't be modest about that.
Is
Yeah.
that was that certification through Navalis, or was that?
No, that was NAFCT.
Yep.
Oh, okay,
So,
gotcha.
yep, Sonny Callahan and everybody. So we had that. That was back in Calhoun. That was one of the first ones we did down in Calhoun.
Yeah, I
It
think
was
it was your
actually,
second class, right? The second
yeah,
one? No, was it? I don't remember.
yeah, no, that was, I think that was our second class. Yeah. The
Yep.
funny part about that one, we're telling stories about, things that went wrong or could have went wrong. So we had 4 guys there to do the training, and everybody but me got a phone call. They had to be either on the West Coast or up north or somewhere on an emergency. And Paul and I were left there, and it was rough. There was 25 guys in the class. Well, guys
Wow.
and gals. Crystal was there too. So I think Crystal was the only girl too, right?
Yes, she
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. So 25 members taking the test. So it was tough. So I was getting them to kind of walk around with me and help me, check the booths and make sure everybody was kind of staying on task and doing the right thing. So it ended out pretty good, but it got scary there for a minute. Like, how are we going to grade all these people? How are we going to try to
He was nervous. He
teach?
was nervous. He was sweating.
Yeah, I was sweating.
He was nervous. It's okay.
That's just because I'm fat and out of shape, and it was a long walk from one box to the other.
Well, you ought to have some good stories then, but why don't you got any serious stories that pop up to you, Jose?
Um, so I guess when we're talking serious, are we talking lessons learned, or are we talking um, paint
Well,
me a
I
picture
mean,
here because
it's
I have
it's
a
just
lot.
about
I have a lot.
anything you want. I'll let me
So
kick it
I'll,
off with one quick
okay.
story. This is um I was probably 28, close to 30 years old, and I was installing some VCT, and I've told this story on this podcast, so I'm going to tell it again. I was doing some VCT in a middle school, and we were down the hallway, a long hallway with a bunch of classrooms off of it. All the classrooms were shut down except for the one at the very beginning of the hallway. They were still having math class, and we were doing like the old VCT patterns where we had waves down all the
Mhm.
way down the hallway and circles halfway through each one of the waves and a little triangle over here, and everything had to be right where it was supposed to be for these doorways and going into each classroom. And it was a complicated layout. Like geometry and mathematics was in full force on this job, let alone the floor prep and making sure it was beautiful, because what's at the end of a hallway is a set of doors just casting natural light across your floor. So anyway, it was me and 3 other guys. I get up to go use the bathroom, and I'm walking by this classroom, and I'll never forget this story because the teacher was lecturing her children that if they don't pay attention, that they're going to end up being like us guys out there.
Oh man.
And I've told this story many times because it hit me, and I remember thinking, explanative word, you have no idea how much education it took to get that floor to lay out, and how much hand skills it takes to put VCT field cut to VCT with. This wasn't water jet, this was all
Right.
field cut.
Yep.
It was, we had to lay out all of the angles, all of the waves down the
Radiuses. Yep.
hallway. All
Yes.
those 3 point arcs had to be at a certain point in the hallway, and it took a lot of math, which that was a math class, you know. And I thought, how dare you say that? I was really ticked off about it, but it's really been one of those things in my life that drove me to like protect the trades. And um the bad rap we get, like it doesn't take any education to do what we do or something. We're just a bunch of dumb orgs out there, putting stuff in a building. No, it takes math, geometry. Nowadays, you better have some darn good computer skills. You better know how to run equations and formulas in Excel and do all this other stuff. it takes a lot to be a flooring guy these days. And so that's my serious story.
Okay. That's
That
Gotcha.
that
You
might be
know,
an example. It doesn't have to be like that, but
no,
that's
no,
my
that's
example.
fine.
no,
Yeah,
that's that really hits home. I never had anybody actually say anything close to that, but I mean, I did a lot of high end residential, especially towards the end of my installation career. And when you walked into some people's houses, they just looked at you like, you were scum of the earth. This didn't happen to me, but it happened to a very good friend of mine's father. And he was my buddy that installs was on the job. But when they got there, they walked into the house to start doing the carpet. They was getting ready to, move furniture, rip and replace. And the guy looks them dead in the face and said, everything's upstairs for you guys to do. If anybody needs to use the restroom, there's a gas station down the street.
Mm.
And everybody was like, because, I don't know how much residential you guys have done in your past, but most of the time when you go into a residential home, 95% of customers are very welcoming. They got bottles of water in the refrigerator out in the garage, or, you know, so on and so forth. And especially a restroom, everybody's like, the restroom's right down the hall on the right if you need it. Now there is certain cases where, you're redoing the bathroom and you got to take the toilets out and there is nowhere to use the restroom. And most of the times on residential, you're not putting a portalet outside. You're going to just run down to the gas station if you have to on lunch break. But that was, that's kind of an example of going back to what you were talking about. Just, people looking down at most construction trades in general, as they are just not educated, and they're just better than they are, and it's terrible. So
Yeah.
uh,
yeah,
Got a
that's
lot of respect for dirty jobs because I think it's brought a lot of light to, like, the jobs are dirty, but then you go to that tradesman's house and it's a beautiful home and he's
yeah.
like, like there's some things behind that
Mhm.
um, is really um, well, it just shows how well you can support a family if you have a skilled trade, whether you're an
right.
Absolutely.
electrician, a skilled flooring guy, or
Yeah,
painter, any of those trades. If you become an expert at it, you're going to do just fine for you and your family.
absolutely. I
So
totally
I'll
agree.
go into the lesson. The one that stands out, I would say, the one that kind of changed the trajectory of preferred flooring. Let's just put it that way. We were working at nighttime at a hospital project, and during this time, we were like 2 nights into a couple of week project, and somebody stole a hospital computer, right? Patient information, like and like security cameras, like it all like, dude, it was like something out of the movies. Our crew walked by, the computer went missing right at the same time. Our guys left to go dump trash. At the same time, when they were leaving, the guy who actually took the computer ran out in the same path as the van. And they're like, you guys stole our computer. They stole our equipment. This is a federal offense. And I'm like,
God.
I assure you it's not our guys, right? And, we went back and forth. And the head of security, and he was very adamant. And I said, look, this is just coincidence. I know it doesn't seem like that, but I'm telling you. And, they did Facebook, like they checked everywhere, like all socials. Anyway, you go fast forward about a week, not even a week later, and he pulls me in and says,
Please tell me it was a nurse.
I just want to formally apologize because it was not your guys. They caught the guy. It was a husband or boyfriend of a patient who was upset with the hospital. That was their way of getting them back. So I do apologize. And he said, word of advice, why aren't your guys uniformed? And I said, well, we're wearing work clothes. And he said, word of advice if you plan on growing your business is if you're not willing to put your brand on your own guys, why should I be willing to let them work in my facility?
That's cool. And you guys
And
are big proponents of that. Like you see
dude,
PF flooring stuff everywhere.
Yeah, I've never really
change
seen any of your merchandise.
never ever. But
So
but I
that's
would
what
say
kicked off your love
for
for making sure you
design,
guys got
yeah,
all that. Yeah.
yeah, for design and uniform, like dude, like no lie. 3 days later, we all had shirts. I made sure that and then it progressed from there. We have to be uniform, man. We have to look the part, right? We want people to take us serious, whether it's commercial or residential, and just the delivery in the series of events. Like that was a very standout moment, I would say, in both Daniel and I's career. Like just
Okay,
wow.
I got another one in that vein, and this is a little lighter story, but I didn't manage it. Our vice president, who's retired from our company now, but he managed a job at a high-end bank, and we were redoing their like break area, and it was more like a hangout kind of party area, but it was LVT everywhere, different patterns, really nice job. And we get a call. Well, I actually got a call from my VP who got a call from his customer, just madder than a hornet, that we were drinking on the job site. And so my VP called an emergency meeting. All the installers came to the office, and we were like, "Hey, apparently one of you guys were drinking on the job site. We need to know what happened." And they were like, "Not me." And so after trying to like get what we thought was the truth out of them, and we were like, "Okay, well, our guys said they didn't do it. We're gonna call them back, say, look, we don't know what happened. Our guys didn't do it." So we called back our client. We're like, "Look, our guys did not drink on your job site." Bull crap, blah 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 blah. And you guys were the only ones up there. Who else would have done it? You guys were literally the only crew on the job site, and you were the last crew on the job site. You were putting up the final stuff, and you blah. And we are like, "Crap, man. What do we do here?" Right? Our guys are like, so long story short, about 3 hours later, we're trying to figure out how to do it, and we get a call apologizing, and the vice president of the bank had some buddies up after we were finished, and they were hanging out in their new party room drinking buds, and the only proof they had, or the only thing that our client at the time was kind of resting his hat on, was that there was a bunch of beer cans in the trash can.
Oh, man.
And so some secretary or someone there seen that, reported it to the GC. The GC called us, said, "You are the only guys there." And I don't know if that's you know indicative of anything other than like just wrong place at wrong time. Thankfully, the VP stepped up. He's like, well, of course, I mean, he's the vice president. He's like, "Shit, that was my cans, man." And
Yeah.
so we got an apology out of that one. It's funny now. At the time, it was not too
First off, if
hilarious.
that was my guys, they wouldn't have left that deposit in that trash can. I don't know if it's a deposit in your state, but
That's what I should have said.
they-
Our guys are way too smart to leave beer cans in your trash can.
Well, I actually had to, talking about beers, I had to buy a separate cooler because I was cheap, and I would have a cooler that I took to the lake or took wherever or took to my buddy's house. And that cooler would also go on the truck in the summertime when we needed an extra cooler. Well, a lot of the times it would be left over from the weekend. And I got a call one day that, the store that I was subbing for got a call that the guys have beer in their cooler, because we had the cooler out by the van and it was opened up where we'd put some ice in it. The homeowner seen there was beer in there. I was like, "Oh yeah, it's left over." They're like, "Yeah, no, they think you're drinking," And I'm like, "Well, if I can install carpet this good drunk, you should see me when I'm sober." So, but yeah, I learned my lesson about that. No beers in the cooler. Say what?
That's how you learn how to install it. You don't know how to install it any other way.
Yeah, I know. It's
You
weird.
gotta love Jorge. He's like going and having beers right now. Kudos to Jorge. He is our Spanish-speaking Huddle host
Oh yeah,
extraordinaire.
Yes.
Yeah. So what a story, man. It's you do one last one, not really last one. Probably I could go on forever.
We know that.
But this one is my own nephew. It reminds me when you said a stolen computer. My nephew, we were on a job site, and he did steal a freaking Wi-Fi, like a Wi-Fi thing right off the deal. Like worst criminal ever. Obviously lost his job after this. But he freaking just walks by, takes it. Camera's like, I mean, just perfect face recognition, my logo's on his chest. The one time I wish we didn't have company shirts, and they were like, "Hey, your guy stole something," and I was like, "Yep, I know who that is. I'll get it back for you." We got it back, and obviously told our client that's the last they'll see him on any of their jobs. That
Yeah.
was about 6, 8 years ago, but man,
That's
yeah,
it amazes me that like when you're there doing the floors, it doesn't matter what trade you're in, I guess at this point. But if you're the only one there, and the search is like narrowed down to like a crew of three, and like you're gonna get caught for something stupid. Don't be dumb.
that was blatantly stupid on his part. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's especially working for your family and you do that and you
Oh, I
jeopardize their
wanted to
business.
strangle him. If my sister would have not
Here's
been too
here's
upset,
one
I would
for
have
the
strangled him.
here's one for the record books. And this got pretty serious. In Charleston, Charleston's a small town. It may seem like a larger city, but everybody knows everybody in the Charleston area over in South Carolina. So there was this one guy that kind of bounced around from cruise to cruise. We'll call him G for the sake of it, right? He was a younger kid. I would assume that he was involved here and there in some felonious activities, from time to time. But he grew up in the installation industry, and when he needed a job and we were doing a ton of work, he was great to have. And the one thing about G is he showed up every day. If he said he was going to be there, he was going to be there. He wasn't somebody that was always late or, he's always there. He
It's
might smoke a
G.
pack of cigarettes that day while he was there, but he was there until he was working for me over a summer. He was probably in his late 20s, working for me over summer. And he'd been with me for about a month. And then all of a sudden, one morning, he didn't show up for work, not answering his phone or anything. And I'm like, what's going on? This is not like him. Everybody on the crew, and I'm like, okay, he must be sick or in the hospital or something. So I sent a guy by his house. And when he got there, he said it looked really weird. Like the door was just kind of open. Nobody was home. He knocked. There was nobody at his house. The door was just kind of looked like it was kicked open. And we're like, oh man. So we had to go on to work, So we're working. And on the way home that day, a guy in my passenger seat, one of my other guys, was like, hey, is his last name blah blah? And I was like, yeah. Why? And he showed me a post. He had been arrested for murder.
Oh,
So he was in the vehicle when him and a buddy, I guess a drug deal gone bad that night, and something happened and the driver shot the guy in the leg. He bled out and died. And because G was with him, he was arrested as well.
oh
And
my
yeah, and so
God.
you can imagine. So that happened that day. The next morning, I got a phone call from one of the companies that I consulted for. We had just been on a job that I had him on, and they're like, "Are you kidding me?" Flipping out on him. You got a murderer on our job, and I was like, "No, hold on," because they
He
knew him
wasn't.
too. They knew him too, and his brother worked for them for years, and he worked with his brother with them for years. And I was like, "There's no way he could have been working for his brother. He could have been working for any of them. There's no way that you're going to pin that on me. That's the most unexpected thing ever to happen." I said,
Yeah.
"I'm upset."
Besides, for clarification, he was not a murderer when he was on your job site.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
That happened afterwards.
Exactly. But and he didn't pull the trigger. He was just there. He witnessed
Yeah.
it. He didn't
Well,
say
he's just
anything.
allegedly.
Yeah. Well, he did time for it, so he allegedly did.
That
Yeah.
sucks.
You know
Yeah.
what's
So
funny?
yeah, it was pretty crazy. I mean, things happen. I think we could all write a book about some of the crazy things that we've
You
experienced, but
just
that was
reminded me about a crazy story that like
yeah.
kind of similar to that. And I'm sorry to interject, but this
No,
is
that's
Now
okay.
let's go.
so
Yeah.
there was a case in Michigan, the Jessica Herringa case or whatever, about this disappeared kidnapping murder. And it come to find out after the guy got caught, his name was Jeffrey Willis. And 1 week before he got caught, we were doing a renovation at a large company. And this is gonna end with a little bit of a joke. I'm just gonna get to the little bit the punchline there, but Jeffrey Willis was the guy who was bringing us our pallets of our material and taking care of our trash for us. We didn't think about any of that, right? But then a week later, boom, this is who it is, Jeffrey Willis. And then we're like, dude, like that's nuts. Like I kept his card, business card, never had his card with his phone number. I kept it. I thought it little cycle, I guess, but I thought it was like that never happens, right? Like that's one in a million because it's just very rare. And then one day we're conversating about it, and my sister was like, "Oh, he could kidnap me. Like, man, he ain't got no like he ain't got no elote van. How the hell are you gonna kidnap my big ass? Like, she was at her biggest at that time, so that's what made it funny. Was that I mean, her Daniel and I were all at our biggest at that time. Like, he ain't gonna kidnap. Like, come here, you want some street corn?
That's funny.
Like, how's he gonna lure you into that van?
Was it the guy I was hoping to hear? Because we're not doing a real good job of like putting us on the professional path.
No, no,
It
no,
was
no,
the
no.
guy.
Yes, it 100% was the
Wow.
gentleman. Yeah.
Wow, that's
It
crazy.
was yeah, and there was a couple other he ended up being serial killers, a couple other investigations that led to that. Yeah, it was nuts, dude. Surreal is one of those things that you can't make stuff like that up. Like your story, you can't make that up.
Yeah, can't
It
make it up.
happened.
It just happens. It just happens, and it's unfortunately there's nothing you can do about it. You can't control other people. It's really hard to control other people's personal lives. You can try your best to be the best judge of who you hire, but
Yeah.
you just never know what they're doing at home and what's going through their mind. So you got
Well,
to
and the
kind of
truth
take it one
is,
day at a time.
it's not a construction thing. You can watch
Yeah,
crime TV and doctors
it's everybody.
and yeah,
Politicians.
you just never know.
Yeah, I mean, and
All right,
there's some. Yep, go ahead.
one you got away with.
Hmm.
Hey, you know what?
I got a story that I was thinking about with this,
Well, yours is gonna
and
be better
My
than
entire
ours.
20s? No,
Uh, you know
no.
what? I'll give a little quick example of one that I got away with. And it was my first time ever doing millwork base. They had asked if you've ever done it before.
like, yeah,
Sure. I mean, it's base. What's so hard about it? And it was a project that was about an hour and a half away from us. Man, talking about showing up uh, to a
knife at
gunfight
a
with a
gunfight.
knife. Yeah, yeah, and I had to finish it, man. Dude, I weathered every single outside, inside corner by hand, and I I bit the bullet. I asked like, hey, the carpenter, could I borrow your saw? He's like, oh no, absolutely not. Oh, no. And I get it, right? I didn't really look the trustworthy part, I guess. I was younger. I was a little vato. I didn't cut off sleeves, shirt. I wasn't. This was preferred flooring, I would say.
He was like,
For
"You're gonna
sure, for
steal my
sure.
saw."
Yeah, but exactly is what he thought. So yeah, I bit the bullet and learned the hard way about millwork base and what not to do.
Did it turn out
But
okay?
I never got a call back. So, but I'm just gonna say it probably did not. Um,
Well,
did it
this
look good
story
when
is
I was
one.
done? It did, but it probably didn't last.
This is one where I truly got away with something, and now that the this job has been torn down and been replaced, I feel okay saying what happened. But we were doing the airport here in Wichita, and it was when it was the old building. And I mean, we had only been in business for 4 or 5 years, maybe tops, and it was a big Collins and Aikman 3 foot tile carpet tile job, pill and stick,
Ah,
and it was at a functioning airport. So with security, we had to check in 10 blades, and when we got 10
Yep.
blades, we had to turn in 10 used
ah,
blades to get 10 more blades. And there was this whole protocol, double lockout of the tools. So we had to have a key, and the security guy had to have a key to unlock the box, and it was this whole thing. Well, I get a call about 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was at night. So after the last flight is when we would start, about 10 o'clock. It was at night, and we had lost a blade. And the contract had read that if there's a blade in the terminal area on the other side of security where we were working, they would have to shut down the airport and we'd be liable. We had to get special insurance, all this stuff to do the job.
Oh, oh,
wow.
They would have to redirect flights, all this stuff. So I'm like, dude, are you serious? You can't find he's like, do you want me to start pulling up carpet tile? Surely it's under the one of these pieces. And I was like, how much you got down? He's like 300 yards. And I'm like, oh my God, dude.
Mm.
And it's pill and stick, right? It was the gold Collins and Aikman pill.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I was like, dude,
Yeah.
I don't, first off, I don't know if we're going to survive you doing that. Like the carpet tile itself, it sticks so good. I don't know that, you know,
Yeah, you're
the
gonna be pulling
product's
chunks.
going to survive, or our floor prep. And who knows if you find it. And so I devised a plan. I got a used blade out of my box. I said because we would pull our box truck up to the front and they would escort us out into the truck and watch us throw away our stuff and we'd go back in. And I was like, I'm gonna drive by and I'm gonna put a blade in the back of that box truck. And so I drove by and I flung it out my passenger window straight into the back and I was like, it's in there somewhere. Next time you go out for a trash haul, yeah, bring it out and you say I found it. And it worked. I got away
Wow.
with it. We got away with it. I don't know where that blade ever went. Uh, there was no national catastrophes, but surely it was underneath one of those because it was nowhere to be found. So it had to be underneath one of those carpet tiles. So it was safe, but there was no other way. They would have shut down air traffic into our city, into Wichita.
we need to make a
Had
little skit with that, like with the Mission Impossible
Oh man,
yeah,
music on it.
it was
Ooh,
insane, dude.
that
That
would have
was
been a lot.
it was one of the most stressful things I'd went through up to that point. I was like, what in the world do I do? Like,
Yeah.
it's one single blade out of probably 50 we'd used that night. Look at this guy.
That's
So
hilarious.
that's one I got away with. And it's been
That's
15
pretty
plus
crazy.
years ago. So hopefully anybody involved doesn't watch a podcast.
Yeah, I
it
think
is
one I
crazy.
got away with it was the semen iron accident, and it bothered me for years. But I'm pretty sure after the house closed, I got away with it. But it was super. I'll never forget. It was Super Bowl Sunday. I was like 20. I must have been right at 23 years old. Little bit before 23 because my son was just born and he was with me. He was a newborn in a stroller in the kitchen while I was finishing a job that I couldn't finish the night before. And I was headed to the
Dedication.
Super Bowl. And I was in a rush. All we had left was the living room. I can remember it like it was yesterday. The living room connected to a hallway with 2 bedrooms off the side. They were already ready to rock and roll, ready to stretch. I just had to put the seam on the end of the living room and stretch the whole thing in. Had 2 columns in the center, big open living room. So I cut my seam. I'm doing a couple of other, touch ups and stuff. And I kicked the iron over walking by. Now I think it's K50, Orcon K50, orange. It was orange seam to air liquid when it turned to liquid. And so this was white Berber.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. In the middle of the winter. So all the scraps were outside in the garage because I didn't need anything else. I had my fill piece cut. I'd already cut the rows. I was getting ready to put it together, and I went to go do something else because my buddy called me. He was like, "Hey, Andy, come back here," and I kicked the iron over, and so all the adhesive on the iron tray. And I'm not going to tell you, back then I was the best at keeping my iron tray and my iron clean, and it wasn't that clean, and it just leaked all over the place.
oh my
Now here's the kicker. The cord got wrapped into a pad bag that we'd had scraps in. And before I got back to the seam, I was cleaning stuff on my way. So I grabbed the pad bag and I threw it over onto the tile
Oh
foyer.
my God, bro.
And it just drug the iron across. So And I finally noticed the iron. I'm like, oh my God. And it's like, by this time it's sitting upright and there's like skips across, not even in a straight line either. It's like, you know, so I had to patch. It was like a 6x8 area. And that's I only had like a 12-foot by 7-foot piece left. So I had to put a T-seam in Berber,
In a Berber.
The only saving grace was this thing ran a great side row. Like you could run straight across and it was perfect. So I put it together and I was like, oh my God, I'm replacing this job. It looked great. You couldn't see it. There was one little area where I could see like there was a seam there. Plus, remember, I still had to put the fill on. And this was before the fill. This was in the field.
Man.
Yeah, it was terrible. So
God.
I was so nervous. I almost ran out of seam sealer. Like there was so much going on at one time. I put it together and man, I was probably nervous for 3 or 4 years. Like every time I got a phone call, I was like, oh God, from Penley Construction.
They're going to call me back.
I was like, oh no. Oh no, I got to replace this job. But I never had to. I mean, the house has probably been sold 3 times by now.
Hey,
Yeah, that's a good one.
You can have that installed. No worries, no charge, free. People were awesome. We're great. See you guys later. Yeah.
Yeah, see you later. No. I still got paid for it, but man, I can't believe I got away with it.
Well, that's your skills coming through.
Yeah,
that's your skills coming through.
Yeah. I can remember power stretching across, and I was telling my buddy Chris, I was like, don't power stretch too hard on the width. You're going to peak those seams. I was like, just barely pop it in there. I'd rather come back for a restretch than anything.
Yeah, no doubt.
So yeah,
that was if anybody comes back for a restretch, make sure it's me.
Yeah. For anything, I don't care. I'll deliver their milk. Yeah.
Well, that's some skills to put that back together.
It was scary.
So. I had to patch I didn't know any better. When I first started laying carpet, I didn't even use a power stretcher. It was just like you go kick it in.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I've been there.
And that was mainly because I was doing some rag ass like $3 a yard back in the LD Brinkman days, carpet. But I did a couple of commercial jobs for this design group, and they stayed with me for years after I started my company. And on glue down stuff, I was really good. Well, they wanted me to do a stretch in. It was a wool Berber. I didn't know there was any difference in the way you seamed it or anything. I got the seams turned out fine, but I was kicking this stuff and ended up just kicker heads like all over, dude. Yeah. And I was like, I'll just trim them off, man.
Yep.
And I trimmed it off, and I was like, that looks terrible. Thankfully, I had one of my guys that I had learned from was an actual carpet layer, and I had not graduated to that. I was the quintessential guy that did it for 6 months and thought he knew what he was doing. They came in and saved my rear end because I had no idea what I was doing, and introduced me to a power stretcher. Later, I started getting trained more effectively, but I don't know if I got away with that because I had to pay him to come fix my problem, but
got away with it.
I got through it, and it was an expensive carpet.
Yep. Yeah, going back to what you were saying about kicking versus power stretching. I mean, when I first moved to South Carolina, the crew that I hooked up with, they were doing a lot of commercial VCT and then a lot of new construction apartments, and there was no power stretchers.
No.
And you learned how to kick decently. I mean, everybody that I know would crucify me for saying what I'm saying, but it's the truth. And if you're old school, it's the truth. That there's a time for a power stretcher when you're doing retail and high-end work and things that are made to last. But when that carpet is being replaced in less than 6 months,
and when it's a 20 ounce or 22 ounce staple cut pile,
we called it bird skin.
Yeah.
Or C grade, because you hold it up to the sun, you see right through it.
Yeah.
Don't burn your iron on anything over 2, or you're going to crinkle the backing.
Yeah.
But, when you can do that and when you can't, but what's funny is a lot of the times it's funny that, there's those installers that do that type of work every single day. And then there's installers that have never done it, and they only do, and I'm just talking about stretching carpet. They only do retail, high-end residential, or just residential in general. And yes, absolutely, you should be using a power stretcher everywhere that you can, you know, but you can't cross those two, right? Because
No.
that guy that's all he's ever done, he'll go onto that multifamily site and he'll lose money because he has no idea how to produce quantity, right?
Yeah.
And if you switch them and send those guys that are most likely decent installers over to that retail job, it's like a bull in a china shop.
Oh man.
They have no idea what they're doing, because they're thinking they want to knock this job 150 yards. They can do that in 4 hours, on a multifamily site, but they can't do that on a retail side because you got a lot more things to look at. So I just wanted to bring that up because it was funny that you said that. I don't hear a lot of people say that out loud, but I'm proud to say that I'm the same.
I was doing like Jorge says power stretcher all day. Well, if you tried to power stretch some of that sculpture shit that we installed, I'm telling you, you're just gonna rip it. You had to know how to kick it. But you're right, you can't take that. I don't know if to call it a skill set, but you could get a pretty dang tight pull on that carpet with a kicker.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing too. Again, you got to look at what you're putting, where you're putting it at, right?
Yeah, these were slum lanes of duplexes and triplexes and quadplexes that were old base housing that basically one guy owned the entire area.
Yeah.
So,
and you're installing it. It's still a finished product when you're done. And, it's the worst thing that's going to happen is going to wrinkle, right? Yeah. That's it. That's the worst thing that's going to happen. And it's not always going to happen. A lot of the time it's going to be replaced before it wrinkles because it's going to be filled with cat and dog urine.
For sure.
But no, I mean, look, and I totally agree with Jose, like power stretcher, save your knees, save your back, but you're not going to walk into any multifamily site in the United States today and convince any guy that's doing carpet for $2.25 a yard to pull a power stretcher out of his truck.
No.
You know what? Actually,
take them forever.
Let me add to that. They will pull it out and open it and set it in the middle of the room.
Yeah.
As far as being used, you're right. And that's a lesson learned right too.
And honestly, there's a market for that.
Yeah.
Well, you're not going to get away with it. Like Pruitt's saying here, he's just giving us a hard time, but he's talking about it promoting bad habits. Yeah, that's why Andy was very clear that there's a time and place for that, and it's very small time and place.
Yeah.
And even on new construction homes, that kind of stuff, you should be power stretching, no
Absolutely.
doubt. I'm talking 100%. About, we don't do much of the apartment. I should clarify, we don't do any apartment replacement, but if we're doing a new multifamily that does happen to have carpet, these are 10 by 8 rooms. The guys might power stretch it, they might not. It's a little bit nicer product today than what we used to install. Literally, like you said, Andy, I mean, you could hold this sculpture up to the sun and like you could see your mirror. If you was in front of a mirror, you'd see your own reflection.
I'm gonna give Pruitt a little crap real fast. Hey Pruitt, also if you leave it out in the parking lot long enough in the summer, it'll heat it up and you can stretch it so much further.
Hey, and I know he knows that he has said that. So
a little water in a spray bottle, a little hot water in a spray bottle, I'm totally kidding, but it's the truth. I mean, I came from an area where there was both sides of it. I got the experience, and that's one thing. I got to experience both sides, and I got to see the quality that you produce from both sides, right? I also got to experience the physical effects from both sides, right? And first in my career, in my early 20s, and we were doing a lot of multifamily, a lot of apartment replacements, and a lot of the times, we got in and got out of there, and we were kicking them in, and I'm not afraid to admit it. They were still good looking installations, and they still lasted. And I'm not going to say this. I hate hearing it. I never had a callback because we always had callbacks for crazy stuff, but we didn't get callbacks for restretches, right?
Yeah.
Mainly because they were already replaced before we even had time, But that's the thing, you gotta
Go-
you gotta figure out where that's at.
try to pull a hard stretch on a Gyp Creek floor that's had 50 different times
Yeah,
the
you're absolutely
tack
right.
strip's
Yeah,
been replaced
so the
on a
answer to
20,
that is,
20
well, you're going
ounce
to pull
thing.
out your aluminum nails and you're going to, pilot drill, and you're going to do all of that for $225 a yard.
Yeah, no,
And,
that's
and
my
I'm
point.
not.
No.
Let me be clear about that. I'm not doing that for $225 a yard, but there
Dude.
absolutely is people that will do it, and that's how they're going to do it.
It's funny you say that, and I was gonna add, like, we traveled down, me and my buddy Dirk and Thomas, we went down to Maryland to go do some a bunch of retirement homes, the residential side, after we already did some of the corridors for the commercial side, and dude, these bathos were kicking out. They were like 130 square yard units, white Berber. These guys were installing 6-inch tack strip with Elmer's glue over painted floors, kicking everything in. And we were going, this is what the guy said, this is what they're doing, go ahead. And we get down there, as soon as we try to stretch, it pops everything. We're like, what are you telling me? He's like, they're doing 4 units a day.
Yeah.
How come you get, and like, we're stretching it. He's like, oh, you're using a stretcher? Just take it in the door. Don't use it and kick everything in. I'm like, dude, we can't, like, we're gonna finish up these couple units, and yeah, you can just let them do all that. We're not gonna cut corners on our end, especially
Well,
with this much of a distance.
the truth is you can't, like, you're not going to talk somebody like to give Pruitt some credit, or Jorge. Those guys aren't going to do these jobs. They're not going to,
100%.
Right.
and they know the right way to do the carpets that are on their projects. I wouldn't do those jobs today.
Nope. Same.
That being said, those jobs are getting done by someone.
Yeah,
Yes,
they are.
yeah.
And that's the
So-
point that I've been trying to prove for years. I've been on a few other podcasts and we've had this same conversation. There's so many facets of the industry, and this is no offense to anybody in the industry, but a lot of the times people live in their own little world of the industry, and they don't understand that there's tons of different areas that, things happen, things go on every single day and are done in certain ways every single day that work. It's unfortunate. I would love to see everybody use a power stretcher and seam seal their seams when we're talking about, stretching and installation. But if everybody did that, then our buddies that are on the tech side of the carpet world wouldn't have jobs.
Yeah, well, and frankly, multifamily just wouldn't. I mean,
it wouldn't exist, no, because it's a race to the bottom.
Yeah, they cannot, put a $25 a yard, which is still a lower end carpet, but they can't even do that level of a product in those facilities and have rent and stuff like that last, when no matter how good the carpet is, it's getting replaced after one, maybe two leases.
Yeah,
that's it. So it's almost like it's a necessary evil in the industry, and is some of those things. It's like it just has to be what it is. We very rarely put in commercial broadloom anymore, but when we do, it's in a tenant space where the property manager is like, hey, I only have a 1-year lease on this property. We need something, the cheapest carpet you can possibly find. And I'm like, well, I draw the line at the fiber. So it's going to be a nylon, but $8, $9 a yard carpet, glue down. I mean, you just can't get around it sometimes. So
yeah, and it's funny when you're trying to do a good job. Oftentimes, it's the cheaper products are a lot harder to work with and make.
Oh
to
my
make
goodness,
look,
yes.
Even with those those super cheap 20-ounce stretch-in carpets, man, golly day, some of them
hard to make the seam look good.
Yeah, it's hard to make a seam look good. I don't care what you did. That rows fall apart. You cut a row in it, fell apart. Try to straight edge it, it'd fall apart. I mean, it was just everything you could think of. You could try to decrease the teeth depth on your power stretcher. If you was trying to power stretch it, it'd still leave marks in the top of the carpet. I mean, there was tons of stuff that you had to be a lot better at. You had to be more skilled to do than a lot of high-end carpets. Sometimes you just put them together, they just fall together. Versus those cheap.
Like peas and carrots.
Yeah, like peas and carrots. They go together like peanut butter and jelly. No,
Well,
okay. I'm off my soapbox about power station, Jorge. And
no, that was good. I think it was good that everybody, kind of heard that and understands that at the end of the day, I don't think anybody's trying to do a bad job, but there's only so much you can do for the pay, and it is what it is. Luckily, most of the multifamily today are all LVT, so
yeah, luckily.
that's a big part of it,
Yeah,
You know what?
those are fun.
How we get
Yeah.
Andy on here? We talk about carpet for 45 minutes.
Well,
Come on,
he
no,
clearly knows
come on
carpet,
now.
so
I know a little bit
He,
about
he,
carpet.
he texted me earlier today. He said, "What's it about today?" I said, "I had to check. I don't know. Resilient.
Well, we can talk about resilient too. We had there's
Maybe I
what's
meant
funny is there's
resilience."
some of the same corners get cut in resilient from multifamily to to normal retail and commercial work. But the thing about it is it's a lot easier to hide those cut corners in carpet than it is resilient. If you start
that's what
cutting
I was
corners,
gonna say.
Yeah,
yeah, if you start
Like
cutting corners
like
in resilient, it's going to show.
the sins show worse on a cheap
Mhm.
product than on an expensive product, and
Yeah,
quicker. If you don't do a few things that must be done, um, you can wind up in a bad scenario with a cheap multifamily, LVT, a 2 millimeter, 12 mil or 8 mil product.
yeah,
It's almost harder to install, just like you said, it's certainly harder than a 5 millimeter, 20 mil wear layer. Like that stuff looks great when it's down.
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And it's all. I mean, for me, it's all into floor prep, right? One thing about any kind of modular, tiles, LVT, any kind of click product, it's super easy to train anybody to do it. All three of my boys, I've trained them to install LVT and glue down LVT and any kind of click. They can all do it. They're, my oldest is 19. But the floor prep it's hard to train that. It comes with experience.
Yeah.
You can go to all the classes you want, but every floor, every substrate's different. When you go in there and you gotta understand how to get that floor smooth enough for glue down, especially, right?
yeah,
And floating is a whole nother monster because you have to get it even more flat for a floating floor than you do for glue down. With glue down, it's important that you get it flat, but smooth is way
Smooth
more
is more
important
important.
yes.
than flat. You
Yeah.
can contour. Now again, not the best way to go, but if you have a customer looking for a little less of a cost on
Well, if
prep
they're not going to
versus,
pay you to level
yeah,
it, I mean, at the end of the
right,
day,
but you can get away with that on glue down versus a click. Now the clicks, man, I'm telling you, you got to be spot on, and that's where I see a lot of the failures from. Even before, when I was installing, still I was helping some of the stores that I consulted for by going and basically doing pre-inspections before they'd call an inspector. If I was in the area, I'd stop by the job site and look at another installer's installation and say, yeah, well, I think this might be a product issue, or no, we need to get this. You either need to get this guy back over here.
oh, we lost him.
And then there he goes. Need to get this guy back over here. And sounds like they did. They said, "Zap, zap." He was back there.
He got the call. All right. Well, hopefully he can come on and see everybody off here. We have reached the end of our time with you guys. Thanks
Yeah.
again for
What
joining
were you
us
saying?
as always every week. We
There's no way you
appreciate
said
your guys'
past
comments.
45 minutes.
You never know. I did say that, and then I was like, but we'll see. It has a way of getting into stories after stories, and there were some good ones there. So appreciate the comments, and everybody who's watching. If you would do us a huge favor, jump on, click like, and subscribe if you're watching on
I get a
YouTube.
tour of the
If you
Uzi
catch,
plant tomorrow. Sorry, I
oh
didn't mean to
sweet,
interrupt you. Get
that's
a tour of
awesome.
that. I'm excited
Yeah,
about
that's one reason I am really sad that I couldn't make the FCICA deal today. I was looking forward to that. It's
I'm
unfortunate I
excited,
couldn't
dude.
make it. Yeah, that's going to be cool.
And don't worry, buddy.
You have to
I'm
give
gonna
us
get
an
some
update next week.
pictures, hopefully a little bit of video, whatever they'll allow. I mean, there's a lot of red tape up, right? But
Yeah,
I'll see what I can do for the audience.
awesome. All right, well, everybody, we appreciate you. We certainly appreciate every bit of the comments. We appreciate Andy joining us again. Give us a like, a subscribe, give us some comments on our social posts. Thank you, Ben. We had a great time. He said the episode was really entertaining. I want to say we had a great time doing it. It's always fun to talk about the horror stories and the fun times. And
Always.
Andy's going to come back on here and say goodbye to everybody as well.
Hey, I don't know what happened there. I've had 4 calls drop today. Randomly on the phone I was on the phone with Kevin. If you see Kevin there, tell him I didn't hang up on him. It's April Fool's Day. My calls had just randomly been dropping, and that was another one. So my apologies for that, guys.
No worries. We were just signing off and telling everybody to have a great Tuesday and that we'd see them next week. Hang out with us for just a second, Andy, as we shut down this podcast. Again, Thank you, everybody. Like and subscribe. Let's keep this huddle going.
Thanks, everybody.
Peace.